We are going to have what I understand to be a wonderful presentation by a local expert on solar energy, Canough. Did I pronounce your last name correctly? Thank you, and thank you for being so patient through all of our announcements beforehand. And this is a handout. Is this from you that everyone should get a copy of? Yes. Okay. Oh, and Karen reminds me that if you find your wallet sneaking up the side of your pocket and coming out the top spontaneously wanting to shed itself of a small donation, we will happily accept it at any point during the evening. Thank you, Gay.
I'm going to do away with the stand here so I can walk around and not trip over it. All right, so my name's Gay Canough. I'm from ETM Solar Works. We do design and installation. We're in Endicott, 300 North Street. We like North Street because that was the address of IBM. Okay, IBM's gone. ETM is still here. We've been here 23 years. So tonight I'm going to fill you in on the very viable alternative. You know, one of the criticisms or one of the things you hear in the gas drilling debate is, well, there's no alternative. There's no other form of energy that's really going to work that we can make a lot of money on, that there's enough of. Well, they're wrong. Not only are they wrong, they're wrong by orders of magnitude. So don't be fooled. On the left, we have a nice solar array. It's up on a roof. When you're down on the ground, you can't see it. You can't hear it. You can't smell it. And its fuel source is going to last another 5 billion years. If we did go forward with all the gas drilling, there's approximately a 2-year supply in the Marcellus Shale, a 2-year supply for the country in the Marcellus Shale. 2 years. That's all. That's it. Pitiful. I don't think it's worth it to rip up the landscape for that. All right, so my background, a little bit about my background. I'm a particle physicist gone bad. I used to work at Fermilab, smashing up protons, fun things like that. But in 1988, I started my company, which was Extraterrestrial Materials, which is what ETM stands for. And we started out by doing aerospace consulting work. We designed the Lunar Prospector, which went to the moon in 1998, looking for water at the poles. So that was kind of our main claim to fame in the aerospace business. In the early 90s, I did a study for NASA on space solar power. Now, this is the idea of putting a large solar array up at geosynchronous orbit and beaming the power back to Earth via wireless power transmission. A cool idea if you want baseload solar power because there's sun up there 24 hours a day in geo. However, one of the questions I studied was, when do we need that versus just putting our solar arrays on Earth? You know, do we really need to go to that extreme? And what I discovered is from a physical space perspective, you know, space on rooftops, there's only one place on Earth that really doesn't have enough physical space on the rooftops to feed the load under it, and that's Manhattan. Everywhere else has plenty of physical space. So I got to thinking about that, and I thought, you know, well, you could do terrestrial solar power, and you don't have to worry about building rockets and building large things in space. So in 1993, I came back down to Earth, and I started doing terrestrial solar power. And this is my house over in Endicott. I tend to always have a hodgepodge of stuff on my roof because I have to try everything, you know. So I got a couple of different kinds of solar panels up there, and I also have some solar hot water heaters on the garage roof. So Extraterrestrial Materials became ETM Solar Works, and in the beginning it was just me. I did everything. I did the promotion and the design and the installation, and I recruit my husband here on his days off to help me lug solar panels, but pretty quickly it got to the stage where he was using up all his vacation days, so I hired Francine Noddy in the middle there to help me in the installing. For a while we were the girls on the roof, you know, it was just us. We even had our own rap song, Girls on the Roof. Okay. and then my nephew showed up one day looking for work, and I said, "Oh, you want to work?" Okay. So I put him to work, and we grew from there. I now have a couple of my nephews working for me, plus a lot of other young installing people, and an office staff, and the whole bit. And, of course, an office dog. That's very important. So we have 12 employees now at ETM. So I came into this through aerospace, and over time I started thinking about, well, why renewable energy? Why is renewable energy important? And my customers really taught me this. They wanted to have some control over where their energy came from. They didn't want to have to pay the utility for everything. There's a lot of environmentalists who are worried about, we generate electricity primarily by burning things. That's what we do. Coal burning is, there's a lot of that in the Midwest. And I used to live in Indiana. I went to Purdue University, and I would come out I worked in the evening, and I'd come out from work, and there would be soot all over my car from burning something, coal and other things in the area. So, pollution from coal burning has been a concern. Now, there is a lot of concern over how much carbon dioxide we're putting into the air, which is a greenhouse gas and is changing our climate. And I think there's very little doubt at this point that, it's changing our climate and that we are responsible for it. There's still a few people out there who want to deny it, but I think most people understand that this is really happening and it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a big problem in your pocketbook. First, I read the other day that Travelers Insurance Company is looking at over $1 billion in claims with the last round of storms, all the tornadoes and thunderstorms and things in the Midwest. So it's hitting their pocketbook. And what that means to you is that your homeowner's insurance price is going to go up. So the first effect of climate change is in the pocketbook. All right, so sources of fossil fuel are finite. The cost of those things are going up. So those are just some of the issues that I have become familiar with. And when it comes to climate change, we have to be very careful because this here is the planet Earth, taken by the Voyager. It's a picture taken by the Voyager spacecraft at 3.7 billion miles away. That one little pixel is everything we know, and we better be really, really careful with it, especially since we have relatively lousy space transportation infrastructure, right? The shuttle is being retired. Our astronauts will be thumbing a ride from the Russians. So, we aren't able to start to expand our civilization just yet to the moon and Mars. So we better take care of that pixel. So how are we going to do that? We have to get off fossil fuel. We really do. And it's, I think it's empowering to the people also to get off fossil fuel because fossil fuel is a very centralized industry right now. So the first thing to do about that is to be energy efficient. Reduce your load. The more energy efficient you are, the smaller a renewable energy system it will take to power the remainder of your load. So that's also the most cost-effective thing to do, is to be energy efficient. Then there's some solar things above that. So daylighting, like our skylights here, reduces lighting load. Pool heating, it's cheaper to heat your pool with solar than any other thing right now. Passive solar design. I was eating dinner with a lady who was telling me about a straw bale house with passive solar on it for heating. And then there's all the active things. Active solar heating, like to heat your domestic hot water, and solar electricity and wind power. Okay, so if you do the things down at the bottom first, the things up at the top will be less expensive to do. Okay, so step one, reduce your load. And here's, now I could spend a whole talk on this, but I'll just give you a slide or two on that. Here are 4 things you can do to radically reduce your load, and I mean radically. I did these 4 things in my house, and I reduced my use from 25 kilowatt hours a day to 5. When I got the compact fluorescent lights, it cut my bill in half. I was shocked. It cut my bill in half. When I got the Energy Star refrigerator, it cut my bill in half again. So just those 2 things were the biggest effect on my bill. Then I started line drying my clothes and trying to tame my 24/7 loads, i.e. all those things that are plugged in, that are using electricity, you don't realize they're using electricity, like all those things that take a remote control. Some certain teenagers' computer game emporiums. So that's how I reduce my load. And there's lots of options now on the compact fluorescents. I did this in the early 90s when the compact fluorescents cost $25. So now they cost what? What do they cost now? Like $3 maybe? And there's a lot of different styles of them too. So you got all the choices. So there's no excuse. There's also LEDs now, which are they're longer lived than compact fluorescents. Okay, so once you do all the energy efficiency stuff, now you can start thinking about how to power the rest of your load, and one great way to do it is with solar. I'm going to spend most of this talk on solar electricity. I'll say a little bit about solar hot water heating, but there's just a lot of activity going on in solar electricity right now. So first of all, the resource, and this is what I was talking to the lady from the press earlier today. And I said this also this afternoon at our little rally. And this is what the gas industry doesn't want to stop. They don't want you to see this. See, this is the solar resource here. Okay. This is 23,000 terawatt years per year. Now, a terawatt year is 8.76 times 10 to the 12 kilowatt hours. Right? The world energy use is 16 terawatt years per year. So we got 23,000 is our resource, 16. So that's the whole world energy use, 16. And there's some other things on this chart. There's tides, geothermal, hydro, biomass. This is ocean heat technology, wind, which is really just another form of solar energy. Wind is. Okay, now, here's our fossil resources. We got a lot of coal, uranium, petroleum. Here's our natural gas up here, 215 terawatt years per year. So we got 23,000. Now, the thing is, though, is that all these things over here, these happen every year. Every year you get 23,000. Every year. This is 215. This is forever. That's it. So, they should be nervous. They should be very nervous. So this is what I mean when I say, not only is there plenty of resource, not only are they wrong, in saying that there's not, they're orders of magnitude wrong. They're factors of 10 wrong. Okay? So that's our resource. Here's another slide about that, with some numbers in different units, but to put some more numbers on things. Actually, that first one that was my newer one that actually had numbers. That little dot over there, that is the area, which is 0.07% of the world's land area. That's the area of photovoltaics. These kind of panels right here. This is a photovoltaic panel. It converts light to electricity. Area equal to that little dot would power the entire planet. And that's with sort of the modest efficiency of today's photovoltaics, which is about 15%. In the U.S., if we wanted to power the entire United States of America with photovoltaics, it would take about 25,000 square kilometers. Now, the Nevada test site and the training range associated with it is about 12,000 square kilometers. So 2 of the Nevada test sites would power the entire United States of America if we covered it with photovoltaics. By contrast, hydropower, which takes up 4 times as much area right now, only supplies 7% of the U.S. electricity. So there's no lack of physical space. Now, of course, we wouldn't put it all in one central location. We'll put it where it's needed, on rooftops or on parking lots or out in your yard. We have a lot of customers now that are putting it on a stand out in the yard. In New York, we have about 3% of our land area is covered by buildings and parking lots. And it would only take about 0.75% or less than 1/3 of that area covered with these solar cells to generate 100% of New York's electricity. All right, so this is just one more slide about the numbers, sort of comparing the local amount of sunlight to other places. Okay, so I had the global picture of how much sun there is. The National Renewable Energy Lab has done measurements on how much sun there is in about 250 different cities, where they actually put detectors on the ground and measured it for 30 years. They did this for 30 years. So 30 years of data does not lie. And Binghamton, this is our irradiance, 1496 kilowatt hours per square meter per year, as compared to, say, San Diego, which gets 2044. So Binghamton actually gets 73% of what San Diego gets. Now here's something embarrassing. The world leader in solar power is Germany. And the sunniest place in Germany only gets 1,250 kilowatt hours per square meter per year. And yet they have 10 times more installed capacity than the entire United States of America and 300 times more than New York. So what are you going to do about this? Okay. Well, the solar, so let me just give you a couple slides here about what's going on in the industry. Because another common thing that you hear in the news is, well, solar power is too expensive. Well, let me show you what's happening with the cost. So first of all, here's the users. This is basically Germany in red here and the rest of Europe. And then the United States is a little slice up here. Okay, so those are the users. The United States portion is going up quite a bit. So it is increasing. And here's the manufacturers. Surprise, surprise. Where are most solar panels made? China. They know how to make things. We've given all our manufacturing to them, so they make most of the modules. There are a few still made in the U.S. Here's Germany's idea of solar power. This is about a 50-acre field of solar panels that powers this village. And as I said, Germany, not the sunniest place. I mean, this 1,250 kilowatt hours per square meter, that is about the same irradiance as Juneau, Alaska. All right, so they've been making it happen, and they've been making it happen by having a good incentive in place. And not only did they get a lot of installed capacity, but they had factories wanting to set up in Germany. So they attracted manufacturing to Germany. For a while, you open up an international trade magazine about solar, and all the advertisements and all the articles were about Germany. So here's what's going on with the cost. The cost of solar cells, these are semiconductor devices made of silicon. They have been going down. Each time factories double production, the cost goes down 20%. And that has been happening for 30 years. So what's different now is that the doubling time is a year and a half. A year and a half it takes to double production from factories of solar cells. So this data left off in 2006. We were having a little uptick here in the retail price because the producers of silicon, you have to refine silicon from other things. They were serving the computer industry and ignoring the solar cell industry, thinking, that's not going anywhere. Well, they got caught flat-footed, so there was a shortage of refined silicon for a short time. But now we're back on track. In fact, not only we're actually below this line now, we're somewhere down in here. So the cost is actually going down faster than it was 5 years ago. So my entire career in solar, I have never had to raise my prices ever. In fact, I've lowered them because the cost of the solar cells has gone down that whole time. Now, meanwhile, I just threw this in for a little jobs information because this is what I was harping on earlier today. That right now, New Jersey is the second biggest user of solar in the U.S. Well, that's embarrassing now, isn't it? And they are getting all the jobs. I read an article that job growth in solar in New Jersey was going up about 20% per year. And when I personally ran training programs in New Jersey back in the early 2000s to train more installers. So when I started, there was about 6 installers in New Jersey. And when I finished, there was 90. Now there's several hundred. I'm not sure how many. But there's a lot of them. And this is all because they have an SREC program, a Solar Renewable Energy Credit program, which is what we are pressuring the legislature in New York to put into place. You know, and they just want to sit there and go, well, we don't know if this will work. We don't know if it'll be too expensive. When there's an existence proof next door. This is what I don't get. You know, they're sitting there watching the other guys have all the jobs and industry growth. And thinking, well, could that really work here? Duh. Now, meanwhile in Germany has a longer track record. They've generated over 62,000 jobs in photovoltaics in the last 10 years. So there's another existence proof a little bit farther away. If you want to get really, really close to home, I mean, ETM, we went from 4 employees to 12 in just 4 years. But you know what? We'd like to have 100. And some of my solar colleagues, we've been talking about, well, how big could the solar industry get in New York? And, numbers like $100 billion industry have been thrown around. So I got to thinking, well, how possible is that? Is that really over the top? Is that unreasonable? So I looked up how big IBM grew in 30 years. In 30 years, this was from 1960 to 1990 about. They grew from nothing to $72 billion. $72 billion company. One computer company. I couldn't even find how big the computer industry as a whole grew in that time period. But it's big. So it seems to me that the energy business, which is a tried and true business, it could very well grow. The solar energy business could very well grow easily to $100 billion over the course of, say, a 20-year SREC program that we're talking about. So now a couple of notes about technologies. I'll come back and say a couple more words about jobs at the end. So these are the three technologies we deal with: the solar hot water heating, and photovoltaics, and wind. So solar hot water heating is a little bit simpler. It's basically copper tubing painted black in a box. You heat your fluid with the sun, have pumps that circulate fluid up to it. Whereas solar cells are semiconductor devices that convert light to electricity. And wind is, the sun heating the atmosphere, so you gotta have a wind turbine to catch that. Okay, so there's a picture of a house that has both solar hot water heaters and photovoltaics on it. We tilted those up so the snow would fall off, because they're an off-grid. They don't have any utility power. So there's a little schematic of a solar hot water heating system, very simple thing. Although solar electricity is high on people's minds as a very snazzy thing, this is actually less expensive and easier to implement, and every house around here could have a solar hot water heater. It doesn't take a lot of roof space, and you can easily generate 75% of your hot water that way. There's some solar hot water collectors. Small wind. Now, small wind is a cool idea. There aren't very many good spots. There's just it's hard to find a good place where you got a good wind resource to put it. We found a few, but you got to have you got to be able to see for miles in the direction of the prevailing winds from your hilltop. So there's a few big wind places that have found some good spots to put up some big turbines. Theirs are about 300 feet up. The ones we put up are about 100 feet tall. So it's a little easier to find a good resource at 300 feet. A little bit about solar cells. Solar cells, as I said, are made of silicon. Now the nice thing about silicon is the second most common element on Earth. So you combine that with the huge resource of solar, and you really got something here. You got this really big resource. You've got a material that you can get anywhere. You don't have to go to the Middle East to get it. You can go out here in the yard and dig it up. Really, it's everywhere. Silicon. We already know how to deal with it because all your computer chips are made out of that. We've brought it to a high art. And a solar cell is the simplest semiconductor device. It's one p-n junction. Your Pentium chip, it has 200 million p-n junctions in it. Right? So solar cell is a very simple thing. So there's some different kinds of solar cells, and I brought a few samples here. Let's see if I can. Okay, so crystalline is the most common type of solar cell. It's crystalline silicon, and what I'll do is I'll just pass this around. Take a look at that. There are single crystal and polycrystalline solar cells. The efficiencies of light to electricity are slightly different for the two kinds of crystalline, but not a lot. And that is the majority of the solar modules we install are made of crystalline silicon. But there's another kind, which you can do things with that you can't do with crystalline silicon. Amorphous silicon, it's not as efficient, but it can be made as a very flexible thing. So you can actually make solar roofing out of this, make solar shingles. Imagine laminating this into all kinds of building materials so that eventually all your building materials on the outside have solar cells built into them, and every surface could generate electricity. We'll pass that one around. And that's also made on a roll-to-roll process, so you can make miles of that in a very short time. There's some other kinds of solar cells that are being developed or made. The cadmium telluride on glass, there's a lot of that being made, mostly for utility scale type installations. And there's the SIGS, which is a small manufacturer of that right now. But the SIGS is also a flexible thin film material. So, and it's more efficient than the amorphous silicon. It's about 10% efficient. Then there's some other things that are being explored. And right here in Binghamton, we have solar cell research going on at Binghamton University. In fact, I've been told that they have come up with a new solar cell that they're getting ready to test. So that's really exciting. What I think is going to happen, there's kind of two roads we're going down on solar cell research. One is to make a more efficient solar cell, so you need a smaller physical area. And the other is to make a less expensive solar cell that's not necessarily more efficient. And you might say, well, why would you want to make a less efficient one? Well, that's what Mother Nature did. Mother Nature made tree leaves, which are 1/3 of 1% efficient. But they're so cheap that the leaves can face any direction. They don't have to face south. And you can just throw them away every fall and grow new ones every spring. So, if you can make something really cheap that you coat your building with, and every so often you gotta, redo it, but it doesn't cost a lot, well, that might be the way we end up doing things. We'll see. Alright, so solar cells are made into solar panels or modules, like this one over here, and the panels are made into arrays. So these can go on a rooftop, or they can go on a stand out in the yard. They can run in standalone, or they can work with the utility. This is a diagram of a standalone. If you did not have utility power, if you lived out in the middle of nowhere, there was no utility line to your house or your cabin, we can install a system like this, and it has the solar panels, it has a charge controller, a battery bank, and an inverter. And the inverter, the charge controller regulates the charge to the batteries, and the inverter converts direct current electricity from a battery to alternating current, which you use for most of your appliances. So that was a very popular thing for people that have remote homes, camps, and cabins. And here's a couple of pictures. This is actually the second one we ever installed, and it's still working. It's on a mountaintop, and the customer was very interested in doing something for electricity. They moved from New York City out to this house on this mountaintop. They had no electricity. They wanted to live the rustic life. We had a lot of customers like this. But after about 2 weeks, they decided they could not live without electricity. So they went out and they bought a small gas-fired generator, which was noisy and stinky and expensive to maintain. So that wasn't very pleasing. Then they called the utility. They called the utility and said, "Man, we need a power line up to our house." And the NYSEG says, "Well, no problem. It's going to cost you $40,000, though." They're like, $40,000? I can't do that. So then they saw my little ad in the Penny Saver about solar power, and we came around and they came around, gave them a quote, and they did solar power. It's still working. This is another off-grid out in. It's right near the border of Pennsylvania, and he has his battery bank and stuff in his shed there. He started out with one set of solar panels on here. Then there was a little falling out with the spouse or something like that, and it became a full-time cabin instead of a weekend cabin. So he added more solar panels. And then he has an underground wire to the house. His little cabin off to the right there. So that's his shed. This is out in the middle of nowhere in the Adirondacks. It's a repeater tower for the State Police and Parks Department. That little shed there has their battery bank in it, so it's a standalone, no utility wires. We figured it would cost about $2 million to bring utility power up there. So they didn't want to do that, so they got a wind turbine to charge in the winter and a solar array to charge in the summer. And it worked so well, they told me, I said, well, how are you guys doing electricity now? Well, they had a propane-fired generator. So the first thing that came to my mind was llamas carrying tanks of propane up there. Because there's no road to get up there. I said, no, we fly it up there with helicopters. Well, that's expensive, let me tell you. So we put the solar array on, and they never had to fire up that propane-fired generator again. So they've since done some other sites the same way. Now, all these standalones, though, they all have this singular problem of needing a battery bank. And we're still on lead-acid batteries. That's still the cheapest thing you can use. Lithium-ion batteries are probably 100 times more expensive than lead-acid batteries. So we're still kind of stuck with those for the off-grids. But in 1997, Governor Pataki signed the Solar Choice Act, and that allowed you to do so-called net metering, where you do not have to have a battery bank. You basically have a solar array and an inverter, and now this inverter has a brain. It can synchronize perfectly with the utility power. It can tell if there's something wrong with the utility power and shut off if there is, so it's not feeding a problem. And it can work in synchrony with utility power. So now you generate your solar electricity, you convert it to AC, you feed your load, or if you don't have load, well then what happens? Well, you get to turn your meter backward and you get credit at the retail rate for that extra solar electricity. Well, that's really great for us here because we get all of our cloudy weather kind of all at once in the wintertime. So we can generate credit when we have sunny weather and then use the credit when we have cloudy weather. So that way you can zero your whole bill if you want to. So that that really opened up the market because we found that a lot of sort of suburban homeowners really were not interested in having battery banks, and battery banks are maintenance items. You do have to replace them periodically too. So now we have systems that are very reliable. You don't have to tend to them. They do everything automatically. And these solar panels, these things will last 40 years easy. They'll be generating electricity 40 years from now. And how do I know that? Because I have seen 50-year-old solar panels that are still generating electricity. And that was old technology. Okay, so these things are going to last a long time. The inverter is an electronic device. They're starting to have 20-year warranties on the inverters now. So they're very long-lived also. And if something ever goes wrong with an inverter, it's usually a matter of replacing a component in it. So now we have an easy way to get solar power to the people. Here's just a couple of pictures of one on the left is a roof-mounted array, and the one on the right is a ground mount or pole-top array out in the field there. And this customer got very excited when she received a bill from the utility, except it wasn't a bill. It was a credit for $104. Like, man, so wonderful when the utility owes you money. We love that. So how about sizing up for your house? Well, first what we have to do for electricity, we have to know how many kilowatt hours a year you use. And you can find that out. If you look at your bill for each month, they'll tell you how many kilowatt hours that month you used. And some of the companies will give you a little summary of your use, either in a little graph or a numerical table of your monthly kilowatt hour use for the past year. If you don't see that, at least NYSEG, you can go on their website and you can look at your energy summary for the yearly use. So that's what we really would like to know, is how many kilowatt hours a year you use. And then we'll look at your site, look at your rooftop, look at your yard, see about where to put a solar array. And the ideal place is in a place that faces south and does not have shade. So that could be on your roof. If you have an unshaded roof, it could be on a stand out in the yard. Either way. Now, if you have a low slope roof, like a 412 or 512 roof, and it faces east-west, that's not too bad either. That's about a 14% difference in performance between facing south. So we've done that also. But we'll help you with that. We have a questionnaire. We usually come and do a site visit and see what your site is like. Now here's how you calculate how much you need. So I take your load and I divide by sun hours per year or kilowatt hours per square meter per year times the system efficiency. And that'll tell me how many kilowatts of photovoltaics I need. In that case, that came out, so 7,000 kilowatt hour a year load in Binghamton. That led to a 6.23 kilowatt system, which is about 460 square feet in size. Okay, so that's for a rooftop, that's not that big. Lots of people have that amount of space and more on their rooftop. It's fairly simple. From a hardware perspective, it's fairly simple. You have your solar array on the roof and an inverter hanging on the wall down in your basement. Now we now have an even niftier thing. We have a system where you can put the inverters up on the panels. So this is an inverter. This is a pure grid tie inverter. It does everything every other grid tie inverter does. And you can start with just one panel and one inverter if you want to. So each panel gets an inverter. So that's a way to start small and work your way up. Or if you have a lot of different orientations or locations that you want to put it, you can do it's easier to design it that way. Alright, so then the output of this thing, the output from the inverter goes right to your circuit box, to a breaker in your circuit box. That's it. And electricians like, well, what do you want us to do? We show them what the work is, and I'm like, that's all? That's it? Let's pull a couple of wires. Yeah. It's not a big job from an electrician's perspective. Okay, so there's something for you techies. Got a little wiring diagram of a typical system. We are wiring, if we're doing the central inverter mode, we're wiring modules in series to get a higher voltage. I mean, a typical solar panel has 30 volts coming out of it, so we'll wire 10 of them together to get 300 volts, which is what the inverter wants at its input. And that has led to the nice phenomenon of much skinnier wire. And if I could have Alex go get me, there's 2 cables sitting on that yellow chair. Could you go get those for me? This is my son Alex. So when we did off-grids and had to deal with batteries, this is the size cable we had to use. That's 4-aught wire. Now this is the size cable we have to use because we have high voltage, lower voltage drop, skinnier wire. So that has lowered the cost, needless to say, also. As far as how we mount these, if it's on a rooftop, we're going to use aluminum rails, and I did bring a few of those too. So this is a little foot that we're going to lag bolt to your rafters. We put some butyl rubber tape on here to make it waterproof, and the modules get clamped onto the top of this rail. Take a look. So that's what we do on our rooftop. We also have mounting systems for standing seam roofs and other kinds of roofs. And then we have ground mounts, which can either be on a pole top array, like on the left there if you want something tall off the ground, or a ground mount array if you want a little closer so you can sweep the snow off it more easily, then lower to the ground, and everything in between. So what does it cost? Well, a 5 kilowatt solar electric system will generate about 5,600 kilowatt hours a year. It takes up 460 square feet. Last time I checked, it was about $28,000. It's gone down a little bit from then, I think, now. But there's some incentives available from New York State, NYRAD. You get $8,750 worth of incentives right off the top. So we give that as a discount. So it's not a rebate. You don't have to wait for the money. We just take that right off. At tax time, you get to apply for a federal tax credit and a state tax credit. The federal tax credit is worth 30% of the system cost, and the state tax credit is worth 25% of the system cost. So that's pretty good for a residential. But when all's said and done, this thing's going to cost you less than $10,000. Now, to put that in perspective, there are about 3 million SUVs sold every year in the United States. More than 3 million. And those things cost $35 to $55,000 depending on what kind you get. So even if we didn't have any incentives at all, buying a solar electric system for your roof is like buying a mid-sized car. So it's not all that expensive. And it's getting cheaper every day. A solar hot water heater is even better. It's about a $10,000 thing, and you get $4,000 worth of tax credits off of it. So it's even cheaper and easier to deal with on cost. If you want to get started, let's say you just want to try out some solar, but not spend a lot of money, one panel, one inverter, 2 tax credits, costs $2,500 installed. By the time you get done with tax credits, it's less than $1,000 out of your pocket. So that's an easy way to get started. I'm going to start selling those at Home Depot. What do you think?
No, please no.
Home Central. Okay, they're a local company. Home Central's in Endicott, right? All right, so life expectancy, that SUV, well, if you get 8 years out of it, you're doing good, right? And it has a negative return on investment. People are always asking me, what's the return on investment? Well, it's positive, I can tell you that. You're going to get electricity every day out of your solar electric system. And it's going to keep producing for years and years, decades, in fact. In fact, I'll probably be able to bequeath my solar panels to Alex here. He'll still be working. Right at the moment in Albany, so they said the incentives for the residential is pretty good. The problem is that we want large scale solar. We don't want just itty bitty power systems. We want large scale. The Public Service Commission has done cost benefit analysis of solar compared to other things. And they keep saying, well, solar doesn't have a very good cost benefit. But what they're doing is they're comparing 10 kilowatt systems on houses to 300 megawatt fossil fuel plants. That is never going to compare. If you did a 10 kilowatt fossil fuel plant, it would cost you more per kilowatt hour than a 10 kilowatt solar electric system. So they're just not getting it. We have to go bigger. We have to have deployed a lot more solar electricity. In order to do that, we need a different incentive structure. And what we're pushing for is to have solar renewable energy credits in New York, which would allow us to start expanding like what we've seen in New Jersey. The solar renewable energy credit basically will be sold to the utilities who will be obligated to buy a certain amount of green electricity, which will in turn set the value of the solar renewable energy credits. Now, the way they've done this in New Jersey is they've set that alternative compliance payment, they call it, for the utilities, to be at a size so that the SREC value is something like 50 cents a kilowatt hour. So imagine selling your solar electricity for 50 cents a kilowatt hour. You know, now you can pay for your system with electricity in, 5 years or something. And so it's also a way of making sure there's plenty of green electricity in the mix that we have out there. If we did that, then I've got 2 customers right now who are ready to sign up if they can get those solar renewable energy credits, bigger customers, people that want 50 and 80 kilowatt systems on their roofs. We need 100 kilowatt. We need 200 kilowatts. Every time you drive by Walmart, I want you to think 1 megawatt. That is what'll fit on a typical Walmart roof. 1,000 kilowatts is 1 megawatt. Will fit on a typical Walmart roof. On that Oakdale Mall, I think you can fit 2 or 3 megawatts on their roof. The Destiny Mall, you can put 7 megawatts up there. You know, and if we have SRECs, these bigger systems will start to be installed. And you know what happens when you do more of something? The cost goes down faster. That's what happens. That is true of everything we do. You know, when I bought my first personal computer for my business, I don't even want to admit what it cost. It was $15,000. Okay. That was in 1988. All right. So, what happened? We made a lot of computers and the price went down. So that is what's happening with solar. That will happen faster as we use more of it. We drive more production of solar cells. And there's no reason why it can't be cheap as dirt because solar cells are made of, dirt. Right? Sand is made of silicon dioxide. So, very common stuff. And I already mentioned there about IBM. So the bill that is in play right now, it's stuck in the Finance Committee. Everybody can go home and bug the heck out of Senator John D. Francisco. He's holding it up in the Finance Committee. We have bugged Senator Libous about this also. The Solar Jobs Act, and I put the Assembly number and the Senate number up there to get solar renewable energy credits in New York. our business could grow enormously very quickly. And we want those jobs here. We don't want to let New Jersey have them all. One of the common criticisms of bills like this, okay, bill number. Oh, is it on the handout? Okay. Oh, it is on the handout. Okay, good.
In yellow.
Highlighted in yellow. All right. And if anybody needs a letter, if they want to draft like a template, just pop me an email. I'll send it to you. One of the criticisms of bills like this is it's going to cost the ratepayers money. Oh, it's going to cost the ratepayers money. Oh. However, Dr. Richard Perez up at SUNY Albany has figured out what does it benefit the ratepayers? In other words, what does it save the ratepayers in cents per kilowatt hour? And he did up this little table showing all these issues where the ratepayers save money. Well, now, this is a little complicated, but one of the most obvious and easy to understand ones is down around the city, there's a lot of congestion on the grid. There's people always want more electricity, and when people want more electricity, what do? You got to put up more wires, transformers, substations, and power plants. So every time there's a 100-degree day down there in the city, the Con Ed people are sweating bullets. I mean, they are nervous because they are thinking some transformer is going to have a meltdown because there's too much draw on it. And it has happened in the past, not too long ago. 3-4 years ago, there was a transformer that essentially blew up in Manhattan and put 20,000 people out of electricity. So one of the things solar can do, especially near the load, you put it on the roof or out in the yard or in the parking lot, it feeds the load of that building and it takes stress off the grid. That means that the utility now does not have to build as many new wires, transformers, and power plants and substations. That saves the ratepayers money. And let me tell you, those lines and power plants, and those are expensive things. Okay, so that's one of the things. That's actually probably the capacity here, or these two things combined, really, the transmission energy and the capacity value. Then he did a whole bunch of other things. Fuel price mitigation. Well, that's pretty easy to understand. When fuel prices spike, the cost is passed on to you, the ratepayer. So if you have more solar electricity, which doesn't need any fuel other than the sun, then that helps even that out and saves you money. And then there's also some values to the taxpayer. He pointed out that grid security, I think it's this one, grid security enhancement, protecting us against blackouts. You remember the blackout a few years ago that took out the whole eastern seaboard? Well, that blackout cost $8 billion. And every year in the United States, we have blackouts, and they cost about $100 billion a year across the whole country. Now, if we had deployed photovoltaics, if we had deployed, I believe it's like 300 megawatts worth, he said, in that area where that blackout occurred, it would have cost about $3 billion at that time to install all that. But let me think, $3 billion or $8 billion? It would have been cheaper. And he has this very cool chart. He shows a picture, a satellite photo of the area where the blackout occurred. And you know what? There's no clouds over that area because the blackout happened when the air conditioning load went up. And the air conditioning load went up because why? Because there was a lot of sun. Okay. Interesting. So bottom line, to build a solar power system, this is kind of what it costs per kilowatt hour for your solar electricity. And this is a value to the ratepayers of solar electricity. The SREC bill would cost, you can figure out what it's going to cost per ratepayer per month. And using a model cleverly called the JEDI model from the National Renewable Energy Lab. The Volt Solar Organization, which is a nonprofit, they have come up with an average cost per ratepayer per month of 39 cents. Now, you can't even buy a flippin' postage stamp for 39 cents. So, and what are we going to get for that? We're going to get billions of dollars of jobs. I don't know if I got this on this set of slides. Well, here's my two customers that are ready to sign up with SREX. This is a apartment complex in Binghamton, and this is another apartment complex right down the street from here, Riverside Towers.
You know who lives there?
And they're ready. And actually, the head of solar cell research at Binghamton University lives there, I think. So they're ready to go. Okay, so here's a little summary of what we're talking about. Solar industry is growing rapidly. Other states and other countries are getting in on the jobs, and we would like to get in on it here in New York. We're just afraid that there's just going to be all this bickering going on, and it's not going to happen this year. And well, okay, maybe it'll happen next year, but why are we waiting? What are we waiting for? We need jobs here. We need distributed generation. The solar resource is huge. Let's grab this opportunity now. I mean, not only is it easy being green, it's lucrative to be green. There's a lot of roof space crying out for photovoltaics in Binghamton. Lots of space. There's the Oakdale Mall. Okay. Power about 1,000 houses. The Oakdale Mall. So I said at the rally, I said that, well, okay, yeah, the sun is a nuclear reactor, that's true, but it's a safe 93 million miles away. It doesn't require any maintenance, and when there's a huge solar energy spill, we just call it a nice day. Okay, so questions? Okay, yes.
If you do get to the point where you have these big commercial projects, would your company still be interested in dealing with a single-family home, a smaller home?
So he's asking, if we get to do big commercial projects, will we still want to do residential projects? For a while, I was pushing for doing more of these commercial projects. Now, this past year, though, something came to me. There is something very pleasing about being able to get your own electricity, the residential side of things. So we've always been in the residential side, and we are going to stay in the residential side because that is really what brings solar power to the people. It's that inherent, you can do it on your own rooftop, you don't have to be beholden to a central large corporation for all your stuff. That's very pleasing. So we're definitely going to stick to that, even if we get some of these bigger ones. Yes.
On the SREC, the credit goes to the facility that purchases it, say the apartment house.
Right.
If Walmart were to put a roof full of photovoltaics and there was an SREC in place, that's going to generate far more electricity than they're going to use in their building.
Probably not, because they have a fairly big load. They have a big lighting load and a big cooling load, so probably not. They'll probably be using most of it.
Yeah. What is Senator DeFrancisco's objections? Have you outlined them so we can counter that? Should we contact him? When we contact him?
Well, I'm a little bit fuzzy on the details of this, but Peter Morris over in Libis's office told us that there's a number of bills that are flying around Albany that could increase costs to ratepayers. And so this is another one of those. It does increase cost to ratepayers. What I think we have to stay on, though, is that the benefit to the ratepayers offsets the cost to the ratepayers. And what I didn't have here on the slides was that there's been a study done to estimate how much economic impact this bill would have on New York, and they've come up with about $20 billion in wages and, basically income for local businesses and wages to their workers. $20 billion. In that's like 13 years worth. and then if you add the indirect impacts, when you have a new industry, you need new support services that go with it. That can increase that 20 billion to about 50 billion in economic impact in New York, just in New York. It also tends to, the solar business is a very local business in the sense that you don't hire people from North Carolina to come install solar panels on your roof. You hire people from New York to install solar panels on your roof. It's just the economics of it just doesn't work. You try to outsource, it doesn't work. So, and then as we use more, as we install more, then we may see some manufacturing come back to New York. There's a small manufacturer out in Kingston right now, and we may see more if our market gets bigger. So that's some of the things you can emphasize to them is that this 39 cents is a pittance compared to what we're going to get out of it.
Yeah, I wonder, given the manufacturing base in this community, what the potential for getting them to manufacture the solar panels here could be. Because I've read about different areas that were really suffering financially, economically, where they put in, I think it was in Ohio, but maybe Pennsylvania, where they turned the town around just by making the solar panels.
Mm-hmm. I got my ear to the ground. I'm waiting for this Binghamton U solar cell to, they're going to do some prototyping and whatnot, and I'm kind of waiting, okay, can I do something with that? Just get some manufacturing started with that right here.
Yeah, you didn't mention air systems.
Oh, solar hot air. Well, those are not as prevalent, but they still exist. You can still heat your house basically with solar hot air collectors. One of the difficulties with heating with solar, either solar hot water or solar hot air, is that it's a little bit difficult to retrofit an existing house. If you build a new house, then it's easy to, say, have a radiant floor and heat with solar hot water. But if you have an existing house, it's kind of difficult to put a radiant floor in. Solar hot air involves putting some ductwork from the roof down into your house. You can heat a room upstairs that way fairly easily. But heating your whole house is a little trickier if you're going to retrofit. But again, I saw a house in Elmira. They did their whole house heating with solar hot air. They had their whole attic. Their whole attic was a solar collector. It was very cool.
My question, I have a few different questions. One, that plastic thin flexi film? Is it possible for you to do a whole roof using that instead of the silicone glass stuff? And I was also wondering if you made towers for turbines. And my last question is, do you sell pure sine inverters for on and off grid house systems regarding solar?
Okay. Well, last question's easy. Yes. All grid tie inverters are true sine wave inverters. And there's also ones for off grid. You can get true sine wave. True sine wave is what the utility gives you. It's alternating current. You hope so. Yeah. Actually, the inverter's better at can produce a better sine wave than the utility, The roofing, this is a piece of solar roofing. This is amorphous silicon, and what you can do with this, it comes in 9-foot long pieces, and it has a backing on it, and you peel and stick it to your metal roof. You gotta have like a standing seam metal roof, like it's over on Price Chopper in Endicott. You peel and stick it on there, and it's lightweight, looks kind of built in. So that's one kind of roofing material that's readily available. There's several other kinds. I've heard that there's going to be some solar shingles coming out at the end of this year. Again, there used to be solar shingles. We installed a couple batches of those, and they discontinued that particular one. And now they're going to come out with some other ones. So that's definitely coming. And the wind towers. The wind towers are just hunks of metal. We usually buy a kit for those from the turbine manufacturer. Although there's a couple of tower companies. Towers are pretty high art. There's lots of cell phone towers. So you can actually buy towers from the same places that sell cell phone towers for your wind turbine. Yeah.
This is quite exciting and inspiring, and I feel a little guilty I didn't do this 10 years ago. But in terms of the interface between what this can be and what we're trying to hit off in the past in terms of the short term, all the friends of natural gas who were really friends of making a quick buck. Since you obviously have spent time talking to legislators and trying to get the government on the side of supporting this like it does other industries, have you some particular recommendations for a group like ours that's trying to find the most persuasive arguments for why people should put their good attention and energy towards this financial future rather than one that's going to risk our drinking water and the beauty of our landscape?
Well, one of the most powerful arguments I think that you can make is from a sheer resource perspective. The solar resource is so huge. Then there are the environmental aspects of not having to rip up the landscape to get solar. But something else that's been on people's minds is the near-term money. The landowners are going to get lease payments, and some of them are going to make millions of dollars off it. If we had SRECs, and here's what's happened in New Jersey. People were paying. I actually did a proposal to one of their utilities for this. We were going to be able to pay the owner of a building a lease fee to lease their roof to put solar panels on it. Okay. Right? So now the nice thing about that is that a lot of people could get in on that. Right? I mean, it might not be, I don't know if it would be something residential could do, but certainly those apartment buildings, the Walmarts, the malls, anybody that has a big flat roof that can hold a megawatt.
How about a cornfield?
A cornfield, yeah, out in the field. That can be done, yeah. That's right.
Cost effective than putting on a roof?
It is. It's a little more expensive to put something on the ground because then you have to build structure. And it does, then it does impact land use to some degree also. So.
It seems like nothing but farmers around in Germany who see that big solar farms.
Right.
But solar farms over parking lots.
But if you, solar on parking lots. Yeah. Now here's the beauty of that. You get to shade your cars so they don't get too hot. You get to generate electricity, and when you get that electric vehicle, there's going to be a charging station in the parking lot, right? We've already gotten a couple of requests to build those. In fact, I think I just got the word from Ithaca College. They're going to have us build an electric vehicle charging station with a solar array in one of their parking lots. All right. So now think about this. Now someday, in the not too distant future, maybe 5 years from now, we're going to have so much solar that we're going to need storage again. And right now we don't really need storage because we're not serving our peak load yet. But eventually we will need storage. If we're really clever, what we'll do is we'll go full speed ahead with electric vehicles and we'll have all this storage on wheels. So now you pull your electric vehicle into wherever you work and you plug in. And when the utility needs peak electricity because they're running out, they pay you for some of your battery capacity per kilowatt hour, and you get to make some money on it. They get to serve their peak load, and we got instant storage for all that extra solar electricity during the day. Okay, so now we've got another industry, a whole other industry going. So we got our solar industry, we got our electric vehicle industry, and we got a battery industry, which, if you don't know, the inventor of the lithium-ion battery is a professor at Binghamton University. Stan Whittingham. You ever heard him? Sometimes he gives talks around here. So, we get 3 industries for the price of 1. Yes.
Every material we use for whatever product has an extraction process. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking about this gas drilling, but also mountaintop removal down at Appalachia. What's the extraction process like to produce the silicon?
Well, silicon is you got to dig somewhere. You have to dig something up.
So it's mined.
It's mined. And now if you can find a place that has a lot of sand, a lot of deserts, you don't have to mine too deep. There's a lot of it there. But you do have to dig it up. So there's been some studies done on, well, what is the sort of the energy cost of producing a solar cell? So that what goes into that is you got to dig up the silicon, you've got to extract it from the dirt by a process which basically involves heating it up to a high temperature and adding some stuff to it to get the silicon away from the oxygen. And then you have to purify it, you have to grow crystals and do all these things. So all these things take energy. What's been found is that the energy it takes to make a solar cell is generated by a solar cell in about 2 years. So what this means is that ultimately you can power the industry with its own output, with its own product. And a lot of other things you can't do that with. It'd be totally impractical. But with solar you can. So at least you got that going for you. Yes?
Are you familiar with Kunstler, I think it's from Hudson, New York? He wrote a book about peak oil. He had basically said that unless we start building solar now before the cost of oil goes out the roof, that we won't be able to do it efficiently, that we do need to use petroleum products to build these. But you just basically suggested that we don't need petroleum product to build these.
That's right. And it's a matter of scale, and it is important to get to scale quickly. The more quickly we get to scale, the easier it's going to be to make that leap to power the factories that make solar cells with solar cells. If we try to do that right now today, it would be a pretty big stretch to do it. So, for example, China, they're making a lot of solar cells. Well, where do they get their electricity? Well, they burn coal to get electricity. So I think we need to bring it to scale as quickly as we can so that we can make that leap to use that for powering things. One of the nice things that has happened already is that wind has been brought to a pretty high scale, so that a lot of factories in the United States, especially, are using wind power for the majority of their electricity already. So that's handy. I think China could do that too if they wanted to push forward a little quicker on wind. So, when the natural gas people talk about a bridging technology, well, actually it's wind that's the bridging technology. That gets you to, that'll get you to the scale without burning things that you need for solar. Yeah.
So, to follow up on the question about making solar cells, is there anything particularly toxic or harmful to the environment in that process?
Well, to make the solar cells, so silicon, there's silicon in it, in a typical panel like this. There's silicon, there's some metal like copper, there's maybe some aluminum in there, some tin on the copper, ethylene vinyl acetate, which is a plastic material which encapsulates the solar cells to keep them weatherproof. The backing is a fiberglass sheet, and the front is glass, and the frame is aluminum. So if you were to throw that thing in the landfill, there's nothing toxic in there to leach into the water. They used to use lead-based solders in solar modules and everything else electronic, and basically they've stopped doing that. And my husband Larry here has spent quite a lot of time researching non-lead-based solders, try to find good no-lead solders that work well. So, they're starting to come into wide use now. There are a few kinds of solar modules that are not made of silicon, like the cadmium telluride variety, and you really should not throw those in the landfill. So the company that makes those will take back every single one. If it breaks, if one breaks, they'll take them all back. So, and that's actually what we should do with everything, in my opinion. Everything we make should have a plan for recycling it instead of throwing it in the landfill. Yeah.
First, on the first section on reducing, you suggested compact fluorescent bulbs.
Yeah.
I've read that they not only there's mercury, I believe, in the compact fluorescents, but also that they emit a certain amount of radiation. I've read that LEDs are much safer and use less electricity. So would you say that we should really switch over to LEDs instead of compact fluorescents?
Well, first of all, the mercury. You get more mercury burning coal to get electricity, a lot more, to run, say, incandescent bulbs than you get from throwing away a compact fluorescent. Nevertheless, again, you should recycle those because they do have some mercury in them. Fluorescents in general are more efficient at converting electricity to light than LEDs. So technically, they are more efficient than LEDs. However, LEDs tend to put the light more where you want it. They're very directional. So you don't need as many watts to get an effective amount of light on a certain spot with an LED. The other thing about LEDs is that they last a long time, 10 times longer than compact fluorescents. So, you're throwing away things less often with LEDs. None of these things, lots of electrical things emit radiation. Now, what you have to think about is, what kind of radiation is it? The kind of radiation that's bad for you is ionizing radiation. Ionizing radiation can rip an electron off an atom, and that can disrupt a molecule, which can cause cancer. You have to have a certain energy for radiation to be ionizing. Ultraviolet radiation is ionizing. We get that from the sun. Infrared, which you also get from the sun, not ionizing. The lower the frequency, like 60 hertz, that's what you get off a power line. That's really, really low frequency as compared to ultraviolet. That's way down there in the spectrum. The energy from 60 hertz, a microwave oven gives off 2.4 gigahertz. Well, that's a lot higher frequency, but it is still 1,000,000 times too small to rip an electron off an atom. So you're never going to get cancer from microwaves. About the worst a microwave can do to you is heat you up, which is what it does to your food, right? A light bulb, a compact fluorescent puts out, we measured this with our oscilloscope, put out about, used to be they put out about 40,000 hertz, 40 kilohertz. Okay, so gigahertz is 1 billion hertz, 40,000, 60, all these things down here, they cannot rip off an electron off an atom. They're millions and millions of times too weak, alright? They can still bother you, right? But
go ahead.
Another follow-up to that was that if you're looking for LED lights, this isn't an advertisement, I've never been there, but I was told that Unicorn Electronics here in Binghamton
they have some.
They have some really inexpensive LEDs, but that's what I was just told. The other thing I wanted to bring up was on the electric cars. Canada has the Canadian government funded this research. They built a prototype car out of hemp.
Ooh, I like that, hemp. Now we're talking.
We could do it for the fiberglass in the panels could be built out of hemp. The cars can be built out of hemp. The whole body, all the plastics in the car can be built out of hemp.
Mm-hmm. And hemp is a weed. It's easy to grow. Yeah.
Okay, I know a few years ago you had some issues with NYSEG and trying to get approvals for the residential electronics that had to come in there, and there's a lot of approval process to get that. And I just wondered if you're now to a point where things are more standardized and it's easier to get the approval from the utility to interconnect onto the grid and what the process is.
Yeah. It's very easy. You do have to have a net metering agreement with the utility, and it's a 10-page form of which there's only one page of that you got to fill out. And what we do is we fill that out for the customer. Then the person in our office, Lori, calls NYSEG's Lori. Also name is also Lori. Lori calls Lori, and she sends the paperwork in, and everything's going very smoothly now. So that's the least of our problems. NYSERDA, you got to wait about 6 weeks to get the approval for their incentive. So there's about a 6-week lead time on that. And that has improved greatly since last year also. So things are coming along pretty good. And actually, NYSEG, they're one of the best ones now, utilities, as far as easy to work with. So.
Has there been much resistance by utility companies to this reversing the flow of the current?
To some degree, yes. Some of them have. I know Con Ed, they're kind of in a funny spot because they really need more rooftop solar to take stress off their grid. At the same time, some parts of their grid are network grid and can only take so much backfeeding. It can't take as much backfeeding as other kinds of grids. So they really have to worry about that. But utilities, a lot of times they do the knee-jerk being against it. But if they really sit down to think, I mean, this is going to benefit them, especially Con Ed. I mean, it's a big benefit to them. In New Jersey utilities, they understand this. In New Jersey, they call solar electricity grid support. They get it. It helps them. So, you can show that even though the utilities are going to lose some money per kilowatt because they're not selling as many kilowatt hours, they're going to save more money on not having to build new infrastructure. Right in the back. OTEC. It's Ocean Thermal Energy Conversion. I don't know of anybody that's working on it, but there probably is somebody trying to get heat from the ocean, yeah. Yeah.
Have there been any problems with zoning or building code issues about installation of either wind towers or photovoltaic cells?
Wind towers, it's a major pain to get a permit for a wind tower. Because typically you're putting up something that's 100 feet tall. And some places have zoning against that. Some places, even if they don't have zoning against it, the neighbors don't want something tall, and they start having public hearings. I mean, we've been to town meetings for as long as 2 years to get a permit for a wind tower. Now, photovoltaics, we don't have any trouble getting permits for them, but there are still a couple of issues to pay attention to, which we check out when we go do a site visit. If you're going to put it on your roof, for example, you got to have a roof that's been built to code. We can't put it on a roof that has inadequate structure. It's not real heavy. I mean, it's about 3 pounds per square foot. But still, that's like adding a layer of shingles. Okay, so we have to pay attention to that. We also have to make sure that it's attached adequately so the wind can't move it. So things like that. And some towns will ask for that. Most of them aren't quite that savvy yet, but they're getting there. I'm helping train them up. So.
Some more questions before
all right.
transition.
Yeah.
I wondered if the panel there is the same durability as the film that is on the metal roof.
Oh yeah. They're similar, yeah. In fact, we have solar panels on this church here, so if you're coming by here, you can look up there and see them. Yes.
What happened politically in New Jersey? Because you make such a contrast between our state and theirs. So they have politicians, they've got power companies. I mean, so, just as Canada was able in Saskatchewan to shift to what they now have in terms of a healthcare system, what happened in New Jersey?
Well, I think it's kind of a good news kind of story, because really what happened was that a lot of people, a lot of grassroots effort led to that legislation, and it kind of centered around, there's these organizations. I'm a part of the New York Solar Energy Industries Association, so that's all the solar companies in New York. And in New Jersey, they have a similar organization, and that organization kind of they pulled together all the solar industries and got a lot of grassroots support to get this program in place.
How long ago are we? How far ahead of us? They're clearly far ahead.
Yeah, and dig this, they only started in 2008. We have had a solar program since 1999.
You've got that shift in such a short amount of time, and our legislature can't count.
Yeah,
this is. You've got the power companies on board. I mean, that's where your question was, and I think it's a reasonable one. I mean, someone's going to pay the buck somewhere, and I'm going to lose from this thing in some fashion. And we know gas companies will, et cetera, et cetera. But the power companies would seem to me to be the key players here, politically.
Yeah.
So what's the problem here?
and part of the problem is that here's the fundamental problem. NYSEA, New York Solar Energy Industry Association, we have hired a lobbyist. Okay. Woo. We pay a lobbyist $30,000 a year. $30,000. That's how much we pay a lobbyist. Now, the fossil fuel industry, I can't even guess how much money they spent per year, but I'm guessing it's the tens of millions on lobbyists. Right? So that's the fundamental problem, and that's why I'm, sort of dedicated to going around spending quite a lot of time talking to a lot of different groups to try to get the word out more that this is a viable alternative, and we really, really, really need to be jumping up and down for it. And unless you jump up and down, let's face it, our government, we don't, much as we may like or not like lobbyists, the biggest yelling in the ears of the legislators is what they hear. So we'll go to all this effort. We'll go up to Albany. We've had 2 lobby days this year. And we'll go up to Albany. We'll do our thing. Meanwhile, there's these fossil fuel interests, and they're yelling in the ears of the legislators all day, every day. So we'll just get legislators on board with what we're doing. And the Business Council of New York, which is a big, the big business, will come in and say, oh, no, you can't do that. It's ridiculous. It'll raise the rates of the ratepayers. It'll raise the cost of energy in New York, and it'll drive business out of New York. And that's what they hear. Because they hear that 99% of the time, and then there's us over here, well, no.
Can you bring some of those New Jersey people up here and talk to them?
Well, yeah, we have done that. Yeah, we have recruited some of them, yes. All right, so I think we're out of time, so I'll be hanging around for a little while.
Thank you so much, Gay. I am sure we're going to have you back. And remember my reference beginning to getting over there not being Santa Claus. I want to say it's a bird, it's a plane, it's NYRAD. And those of you who are new to NYRAD, there are a lot of people who've been very active, and one of the things that drives them is they're incredibly passionate about solar and renewables. So that's a big part of what we're about. We're not just against gas drilling, but we're for bringing our energy, and a lot of what we do is the lobbying. And the more of us there are, the more lobbying we do. So if that's the thing that you want to devote your attention towards, there is definitely a place and a lot of support and a lot of creativity to help you be part of a community that makes a difference. And you will be back, I'm sure. And in terms of the question about New Jersey, just by sheer accident, through a friend, my wife and I met a fellow who's an attorney in New York City who works for an organization that's solely about promoting solar and was a big part of getting it going in New Jersey. And this may be the moment to bring him up here to speak to us about what is happening on the political level. Absolutely. And Bram had an announcement he wanted to make that he patiently waited to the end. So,
along the lines of what Don was talking about telling 3 other people and them telling 3 other people and spreading the word, doing a little activism. Facebook, if you friend NYRAD on Facebook, if you're on Facebook, when you get an announcement from Facebook or an event invitation, all you have to do is hit share, and it goes to all your friends. And if you get an event invitation, like for the rally today that was on there, all you have to do is invite and click on all your area friends that you know could possibly make it, and they'll get that in their mail. And so it's a great way to spread the word and to let potentially millions of people know what's going on. So remember, friend us on Facebook. Thanks.
Thanks. By the way, if you want some ammo, if you want all these numbers about jobs and all this, I have uploaded it to etmsolar.com/solarjobs. Okay, so if you just go put that link in, etmsolar.com/solarjobs, I have like the study on how many jobs it'll generate, the cost to the ratepayers. Some of my slides are up there. Okay, so that's where you can get some ammo for your legislators. And then I've also got some little cards from ETM and some swag, some pens and things in the back. So help yourself.